if we're not the right people, then we'll respect that. But we'll be here as long as we can and make a contribution to society. And that's really what we're here for.
Meet Brenda. She's a world-famous leadership coach who's lived in Singapore for 12 years. During our talk, she told me what's wrong with pedestrian crossing in Singapore, her biggest shock after moving here from Bangkok, and the one most important principle every great leader must develop. I'm Max, an entrepreneur and YouTuber from Singapore. Let's go.
One of the funniest things when we first arrived in Singapore, I remember this very clearly. We had just moved into our home. We needed to get a few things fixed, like maybe I think we had to get some frames hung on the wall, and then we needed to have an electrician come and fix something. And so we called out and got the names of electricians and figured out, all that. And sure enough, they all showed up on time. They showed up on time and they actually did the work. We were like, wow, that's amazing. How does that? Because we'd always been living in kind of developing countries. So for the first time in years, we were like, we could get used to this. People actually do what they say they're going to do, and it's well done. So that was a really pleasant surprise.
Anything like you're still not used to in Singapore?
One thing that I've noticed, which I find fascinating, it has to do with pedestrian crossings.
Okay,
I'm so used to anywhere you step into a street to cross. Now these are where there's no lights and maybe not zebra stripes or whatever. You have to cross. There's no other way to cross. It's at an intersection, and then suddenly you'll start walking, and it's just like, I feel like I'm in a Grand Theft Auto video or something. It's like Grand Theft Auto. I feel like I'm going to get hit. So, and it is official that pedestrians do not have the right-of-way. So that's really interesting for me. Very different. I'm used to having the right-of-way.
I think they actually teach you, because I was having classes for my motorcycle here, like 2B license and 2A license. They actually teach you, like, if you turn, even like from major road to minor road, and if you're like riding a bike, and then you turn, you let pedestrians go. But in real life, it doesn't work this way.
Well, that's what I've noticed as well. Now, I will tell you, my husband says just the opposite. He never has a problem, but he's a big guy, so maybe they're afraid to hit him.
Maybe they're afraid, to hit him. Are you PR in Singapore?
I'm not. We applied 3 times. When we first moved here, it was funny. When we first moved here, really getting PR was not that difficult. 12 and a half years ago, it was pretty simple. And we didn't do it. And we regret that now. We probably should have, could have, but we just were busy building our lives here and our business here. And then about 4 years in, we decided, and by then, to apply the first time, and by then, it'd gotten so much more difficult just because there was so much more demand to become a PR. So we have not received the PR yet, but even that, I have to say, would we like it? Yes. Do we trust the government in their decision? Yeah. If we're not the right people, then we'll respect that. But we'll be here as long as we can and make a contribution to society. And that's really what we're here for. So, as best we can.
So for you, like, Singapore is home, right?
It really is. Longest we've lived any place. One location,
How's your relationship with Singlish?
Oh, not so good, la. I've tried to learn it. And, what's the funny thing, I do it for fun. I mean, the one, I was just joking with my husband earlier. I was saying that when I was just in the United States about a month and a half ago, and I went and I had just gotten off the plane and went to try on some clothes. I needed to buy some clothes. And I literally walked up to the dressing room woman. I said, try on can la. I'm like, what? I can't believe I just said that. She looked at me very strange. So I guess I'm getting used to it. You adapt it over time. But there's fun things like siok and some fun things that it's just it's nice to throw them around once in a while and show that you respect the culture.
I use can pretty often, even with people not from Singapore, and then like, oh no, don't use it, because it's like they don't understand it.
Me too. It's a can.
Because can is so easy. What do you think US can learn from Singapore?
Well, the one thing I love the most is how Singapore manages diversity. Being based out of Singapore, I mean, I've actually coached 60 different nationalities in my business, 60. I mean, they're not all here in Singapore, but it's not unusual to be dealing with many different nationalities every single day. I love that, especially since I've lived overseas for so long. To me, there's nothing more joyful than that diversity. And to celebrate the diversity with the various public holidays. And, we've been to Buddhist weddings and funerals, and Sikh weddings and funerals, and Christian weddings and funerals. And I just love that diversity. And I think learning how to blend the various nationalities, belief systems, like Singapore has, is really exciting. I like that.
you work very closely with different kind of people, different backgrounds, different nationalities. Do you think the core values of majority of people, they're kind of similar, or they're actually different, like people from different backgrounds?
So here's what I find interesting. When we're born, Max, we're all born the same. I mean, we are not born with limiting beliefs. We're not born with, specific ways of acting. We learn all that. We learn it from our parents, we learn it from our culture, we learn it from our schools, we learn it from our media. We learn it all. And so when you can actually help people get back to the foundations, just the basics of not how we're different, but how we are similar, that's really where I think life gets a lot of fun. Because when you stop looking past the external and just focus on the internal, you find more similarities than differences. You find more unity than divisiveness.
But it probably takes time and effort,
Well, it takes changing your mindset. It takes changing your perception. And perception is everything, right? It's how we perceive things is what happens in our lives. So I think that's what's really key, especially in an environment that's so diverse like this.
Is there 3 simple steps that you can advise to our audience, what they can do to achieve that, to see themselves more from internal perspective?
Well, the number one thing, Max, is self-awareness. We get into the hamster wheel of life, right? It's the same thing over and over and over. And what happens is we start with a thought. Like our parents may tell us something, or a school teaches us something, and that's a thought. And when you think that thought over and over and over and over again, what happens is it becomes a belief. And those beliefs, you think them again and again and again and again, and those beliefs become our version of the truth. And then you have to challenge yourself and say, is it really the truth? Was it the truth I had when I was born, or is that the truth I've learned over time? And really, if you think about diversity, equity, inclusion, all that's happening in the world right now, it really forms around that. It really forms around looking at trying to find the truth. So how do you do that? Self-awareness. You really have got to spend the time internally saying, wait a minute, can I challenge that belief? Is that really true? And it's fun once you start to do that. Or was it true once in the past, but it's not true anymore? That's very common. I see this in leaders a lot. They'll come in and they're frustrated because they're not progressing to the career that they want to get to, or the level they want to get to. And often it comes down to what got you here won't get you there, meaning these behaviors that you used to demonstrate when you were younger in your career worked for you then. They worked. Yeah. But now you're in a different environment, different situation, different level, different company, whatever. It doesn't work anymore. But those hamster wheels that we're on, we just keep doing the same things over and over. So it takes a conscious decision to choose differently, self-awareness, and then once you realize you can change the inside, inevitably it will change the outside. There can be no outer change unless there's been inner change first.
Are there any common traits of good leaders, great leaders, some common features?
Yeah. One that often people overlook, listening. I don't care how many people are in an organization. Let's say there's 100,000 people in an organization, massive organization, right? You're still only one person out of 100,000. Even if it's 100, you're only one out of 100 people. And what I often say is, the higher up you get, the more you have to listen, because you're further away from the ground and where things are happening. You're further away from the client. You're further away from the customer. You're further away from what's really happening on day to day. And so you really have to have an exposure to what's going on. And the only way to do that is listen. Yeah. And you have to make sure you're getting really unfiltered feedback. The feedback has to be really honest feedback.
Can you tell the story about A.G. Lafley when you were on P&G?
Yeah.
I listened to one of your interviews.
So A.G. Lafley was a great leader. He recruited me into Procter & Gamble, and I really wasn't going to go to Procter & Gamble. I really wasn't interested. In fact, I'd had 3 interviews before that with P&G, and all of them I walked away saying, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. Yeah. And those 3 people apparently had given me a thumbs up, so that meant that it went to a higher level, and A.G., who was the head of my division, said, no, come in, I want to talk to you. So I'm sitting across from A.G. Lafley, who eventually became the chairman and the CEO. Yeah. I'm sitting across from him at a time when he was the vice president of my division. And in 45 minutes, he convinced me to join. He was so convincing. And he basically said, you take care of us, we'll take care of you. This is going to be a symbiotic relationship. Okay. So I started working, and it wasn't long after that where AG would come down to the bullpens where we worked, sitting in our spaces. And he would come down, and it would be late at night. I was always working late at night, hardworking. And no one else would really be around. And he'd pop down, and he'd say, Brenda, what's going on? Tell me what the scoop is, and what are people saying, and what's the experience of working here, and what are people saying about the leadership, and And he would ask me this and ask me this and that. He'd come back every 2 weeks or so and ask the same thing. And finally one night, it was really late, and I said, hey, do you mind if I ask? I said, I'm really curious. Why do you keep asking me this? You know, what you keep asking me? He said, Brenda, this. He said, when I hired you, he said, I knew you'd be a straight shooter. I knew you'd be honest with me about what was going on in the organization. And he said, the thing is, the higher up I get, the less honest truth I hear, the more filtered the information is. And he said, I want someone who's going to be straightforward with me and tell me what's really going on. Because he said, the higher up you get, the less real information you get. So that's why I think listening is so important.
How do you approach mistakes? And can you recall any mistakes in your life that you like really remember? Oh, that was a mistake.
One of the things I always encourage clients to do is never look at anything as a mistake. Everything is always working out for a greater good, always. And I love when you have someone come in and they're very upset because they've made a mistake, and by the time they walk out, they go, oh my gosh, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. Many times someone loses their job, they come in and they go, actually, this is the best thing that ever happened to me. Eventually, they get there, right? Would you, if you looked at my life, would you say I had lots of mistakes? Trust me, there's a lot of mistakes. But I've learned from every one of them. Every single one of them made me better, turned me into a better position, put me up in a better situation to understand what I wanted. Because what we don't want teaches us what we do want. That's really key. So for me, I don't even think about mistakes. I celebrate them. It's like, well, that was a bad thing. I didn't do that very well. Let's do that better, right?
How can you overcome these things? Because sometimes, like, okay, you try to develop self-awareness. At the same time, you have these beliefs like deeply rooted in your personality. And you can say to yourself, okay, let's move on. I just forget this thing that happened with me. But then after a couple of weeks, it's like, it's still there and you cannot overcome it.
Well, first of all, I love that 2 weeks you're recognizing it, because that's the key. When you can recognize it, that's when you go, oh, there is a pattern here. Oh yeah, I am doing that, right? So that's really, really key. I think it all comes down to what do we really believe that's going to help us move forward? You know, as humans, we are not typically masochistic. We're not here to hurt ourselves. We're not here to beat ourselves up. We don't like to do that, but if you do, it's really about saying, okay, there's a belief going on here somewhere, and it's not serving me. Is it serving me? No, it's really not serving me. It's one of my favorite questions to ask. Does that belief serve you? No, it doesn't. Okay. Do you want to let go of it? Yes. You'll never let go of it. What you can only do is replace it with a new belief. You can do that. You can do that. So I remember working with a woman. She was just taken over as CEO and really didn't believe in herself as the CEO. Didn't believe that she could be the CEO. And that was the belief. That's the belief. And so we worked through a model I have, and I said, okay, if you believe I'm never going to be a great leader like other CEOs, what happens? You start to distrust yourself. You have lack of confidence. What happens when you walk into meetings with lack of confidence? You don't come across the way you don't act, react, look, sound the way you should or could as a CEO. And what's the ultimate outcome? Well, guess what? You're never going to be a great CEO because you've convinced yourself, you've walked yourself through that belief pattern. Now, what if we change that underlying belief to, I am learning how to be a great CEO. I'm learning how to be a great CEO. That's easy, because it's like, Max, look, when we're learning to ride a bike, what do? We fall off, we get back on. We fall off, we get back on, and eventually we ride the bike. We give ourselves a break when it comes to riding the bike. But when it comes to things like leadership, we don't give ourselves any break. We're so tough on ourselves. So when you can say, I am learning to, what happens? You start to feel more empowered, more excited. It's like, this is going to be fun. You're curious. And so what do? You might ask more questions. You might engage more people. You come into every meeting with a sense of curiosity. We're going to have some fun here to see what happens. I'm learning. And what happens? Well, you do learn eventually how to be a great CEO.
What's your main life principle?
Everything is always working out for my greatest good. Everything. Your greatest good, our greatest good, everything. It really is. And it's hard for some people to see that, especially when things go wrong or they make mistakes. But no. When you stop to look at it from that perspective and you realize everything is really working out, it's kind of fun. It makes it a game. So, okay, well, if this is working out, show me how, because it doesn't feel like it right now, right? It's fun. Everything is always working out. And know thyself. It's really about the inside work again.
If you want to hear more stories of inspirational, fun, and impactful people, watch the next video. I promise you will enjoy it. No, seriously, you will.